What's going on, Vikings Nation? Are you ready for a major shakeup that could redefine the future of this defense? Because today's story isn't just another update. It's a warning sign, a challenge, and maybe even an opportunity hiding in plain sight. The Minnesota Vikings are standing at a crossroads right now, and what happens next could decide whether this team stays elite or takes a step back. Let me hit you with the big teaser right away. The Vikings didn't just fail to strengthen the defensive tackle position. They actually got weaker. 2 starters gone. No clear replacements. And now the pressure is on heading into the draft. So the question is simple. Are we watching a risky gamble or a genius long-term plan? Stick with me because we're breaking this all down like true fans. I want your takes, your reactions, and your predictions in the comments. Because this one affects everything. The Minnesota Vikings entered free agency with several needs, but nobody expected the defensive tackle room to become the biggest concern. Yet here we are. No major additions, key departures, and now analysts are calling DT the #1 priority on the roster. And honestly, it's hard to argue with that. When you lose experience in the trenches, especially on defense, you don't just lose bodies, you lose stability, communication, and physical dominance at the line of scrimmage. That's where games are won. What makes this even more intense is the timing. The draft is right around the corner, and the Vikings are heading into it with clear pressure to fix this issue. The spotlight is officially on. Now let's talk about what really happened. The Vikings moved on from 2 starting defensive tackles, and that decision sent shockwaves through the depth chart. Suddenly, what used to be a solid rotation turned into a massive question mark. And this isn't just about losing players, it's about losing proven production. When you remove experienced starters, you're forcing younger, untested players into bigger roles. That's exciting, but also dangerous. So now the big question becomes, do the Vikings trust their young core? Or are they planning a major move in the draft to fix this immediately? Looking at the current defensive tackle group, it's clear that youth is now the defining theme. Names like Jalen Redmond, Levi Drake Rodriguez, and Tyrion Ingram Dawkins are stepping into the spotlight. These are players with potential, no doubt. We've seen flashes. We've seen moments where they looked like future contributors. But flashes don't win championships. Consistency does. And right now, consistency at the defensive tackle position is far from guaranteed. That's why this situation feels so critical. Let's be real for a second. This is where games get ugly. If your defensive line can't hold up, everything behind it starts to collapse. Linebackers get exposed. The secondary struggles. The entire defense feels the pressure. And that's what makes this situation so intense. The Vikings defense has been one of the most efficient units in the league under Brian Flores. That's not something you want to jeopardize. So whatever decision is made here, it has to work. There's no room for error. Now here's where things get interesting, the NFL draft. The Vikings have 9 picks, including 4 in the top 100. That's serious ammunition to fix roster holes. And you better believe defensive tackle is at the top of that list. Analysts are already projecting Minnesota to target this position early, possibly within the first 2 rounds. But drafting a defensive tackle isn't always a quick fix. These players often take time to develop. So the Vikings need to be strategic here. Let's talk prospects. There are some serious names in this draft class that could make an impact. Guys like Peter Woods, Caden McDonald, and Caleb Banks are generating buzz. These are powerful, disruptive players who can anchor the defensive line. But again, drafting talent is one thing. Developing it is another. So the question becomes, do the Vikings go for immediate impact or long-term upside? One name that keeps popping up is Caden McDonald. Analysts love his run defense, and his production speaks for itself. A dominant presence in the trenches. Some mock drafts even have him landing in Minnesota. And honestly, it makes sense. The Vikings need someone who can step in and contribute right away. But is he the guy? That's what the front office has to figure out. Now let's not forget about free agency. There are still veterans available who could help stabilize this position. Players with experience, leadership, and proven ability. One particularly interesting option is Christian Wilkins. There's a connection there with Brian Flores, which could make this move very realistic. And if the Vikings decide to go that route, it could completely change the draft strategy. But here's the twist. What if they don't make a move? What if the Vikings truly believe in their current group? That would mean more playing time for guys like Rodriguez and Ingram Dawkins. Bigger roles. Bigger expectations. And honestly, that's a bold move. It shows confidence, but also adds pressure. Because now, these young players aren't just developing, they're being counted on. There's also Jalen Redmond, who has been quietly building momentum. Some believe he could become a cornerstone piece on this defensive line. If that's the case, the Vikings might be closer to stability than we think. But again, it's all projection at this point. And in the NFL, projections don't always become reality. So the front office has a huge decision to make. Another angle to consider is risk versus reward. Drafting someone like Caleb Banks, for example, comes with talent but also injury concerns. Do you take that risk for potential greatness? Or do you play it safe and go with a more reliable option? These are the decisions that define franchises. And right now, the Vikings are right in the middle of that process. Let's zoom out for a second. Despite all these concerns, the Vikings defense has been elite under Brian Flores. Top-tier efficiency, consistent performance. That's not something you ignore. It means the system works. The coaching works. So even with roster changes, there's reason to believe this unit can still succeed. But belief only goes so far. Execution is everything. And that brings us back to the main point, the defensive tackle position. It's the biggest question mark on this team right now. And how the Vikings answer that question will shape the entire season. Draft, free agency, internal development, every option is on the table. But only one path will define the future. So now I want to hear from you, Vikings fans. What's the move here? Should the team draft a defensive tackle early? Go after a veteran? Or trust the young guys already on the roster? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading everything. And if you're loving this kind of deep dive into Minnesota Vikings news, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with every Vikings fan you know. Because things are heating up fast, and you don't want to miss what comes next. SKOL.